Nigeria is now 62-year-old as an independent nation, and ever since its independence from British colonial rule on October the 1st, 1960, it has been a checkered history for the country. Now, from 1960 to date, Nigeria has had 16 heads of government, and 8 of whom were military heads of state, and two of whom were democratically elected. Good afternoon and happy Independence Day. Welcome to Standpoint. Now, thrice, the nation's democratic dispensation was disrupted by military coups, with the regimes hijacking power from one another. Now, this led to the country having what's now known as the First, Second, Third, and the current Fourth Republics. The current dispensation, which began in 1999, has lasted 23 years and is the longest democratic dispensation in the nation's 62-year post-independence history. Now, according to some pundits, this is arguably the greatest feat the country has achieved as a developing nation. But what could be the fate of the country going into another round of elections in 2023? But first, let's listen to some excerpts from President Buhari's speech this morning to Nigerians, and we'll get into our conversation.
To further open up our communities to economic activities, we have continued to boost our railway infrastructure with the completion of a good number of critical railway and at the same time rehabilitating as well as upgrading obsolete equipment. I must confess that I am very pained by the recurrent disruption to our tertiary education system, and I am using this Independence Day celebration to reiterate my call for the striking academic staff union of universities to return to the classroom, assuring them to deal with their contending issues within the limits of the scarce resources available. This administration has made appreciable progress in redressing these issues that have been lingering for over 11 years. The federal government will continue to mobilize resources both internationally and nationally towards funding education to ensure that our citizens are well educated and skilled in various vocations in view of the fact that education is a leading determinant of economic growth and employment generation. As we begin the transition process to another democratically elected government, I want to implore all aspirants to conduct issue-based campaigns devoid of hate speeches, as well as other negative and divisive tendencies. I also want to express my wish that we see more female and youth participation in the forthcoming electoral cycle. I am sure that our teeming and energetic youth now realize that violence generally mar elections and so should desist from being used by politicians for this purpose.
Let's remind you that Nigeria is celebrating 62 years of independence in an electioneering year, which means that whoever becomes president of this country in 2023 will usher Nigeria into its 63 years of independence. Now, while some parties have been able to put their house in order, some have not been able to constitute their presidential campaign council. Others are having internal affairs. All of this while Nigeria is celebrating 62 years. And one wonders, what does this mean for our democracy and where we stand as a country? But let's speak to representatives of 2 of these front-running political parties. We're joined now by a spokesperson for the Atiku Presidential Campaign Council. He is Charles Aniago. He joins us via Zoom. Good to have you join us.
Good afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be here.
We're also now joined by the Deputy National Chairman of the Peter Obi movement, Obasi Chinonso. Good to have you join us.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure being part of you. And happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day to you both. Let me start with you, Charles Aniago. I mean, we're celebrating 63 years, or 62 years rather, of independence. And when you look at this country's history, in the Fourth Republic, one cannot talk about Nigeria's independence without mentioning the PDP. The PDP was the first party that we ever had in the Fourth Republic. It was the very first party as we returned to gain control of this country in terms of leadership, as we return to democracy. How would you assess the role that the PDP has played in the history of Nigeria, especially in the Fourth Republic?
Let me join my brother from the Labour Party to also wish Nigerians happy 62nd independence, even if there are many reasons why individuals may not want to be happy. At least let's try to be happy, because by the grace of God, there is hope in the horizon. The last 62 years may not have been a reflection of what Nigerians would want the country to look like, given the expectations of most Nigerians at independence, and then the desire for us to at least compete among other countries within the global community. But within these last 62 years, there are some stopgaps, periods where you could point out that certain developments took place that you can point to. And one of those periods is between 1999 and the year 2015. And I want to say why I want to identify this period. You recall that shortly after the military interregnum that bettered the Fourth Republic, Nigerians were more or less becoming quite hopeless on a number of issues, on a number of areas, to the extent that even the middle class have been completely wiped out of existence. The emergence of Obasanjo Atiku in 1999 began to change that trajectory, to the extent that we were not able to bring back the middle class. A whole lot of development took place within that period that we can point to. And so when we look at our developments today, what is happening today, you see a number of Nigerians wanting to reenact what happened between that period, particularly in the areas of development. There are a number of other pitfalls which we will not shy away from where we have also learned a number of lessons, and we are quite hopeful that by the grace of God in 2023, when Atiku Abubakar must have assumed office, we'll be able to also correct some of those pitfalls that were witnessed during that period, and then also advance on a number of other areas, in addition to consolidating on a number of areas where we have recorded appreciable developments. But by and large, there were a whole lot of things that were witnessed during that period, particularly with respect to the issues of our unity as a country. And so I'm quite hopeful that as we approach the ballot in 2023, that most Nigerians will be making their decisions not based on sentiments, but based on the facts on ground as to who the individuals are and what they are going to be capable of bringing to the table, with a view to reversing the ugly development that we have witnessed, particularly in the last 7 years of the APC-led government.
And if I may quickly jump in, Mr. Niago, just let me quickly jump, because I'm staying with you. Some Nigerians will agree with you that, yes, maybe we recorded some level of development in those administrations, but there are some who will also say that, look, these administrations also somehow continue to perpetuate the corruption that started in the military era, as it were.
One thing you must understand, as a party, we will not shy away from areas where we have certain pitfalls. But if you recognize that it was that administration that bettered the agencies such as the EFCC, agencies such as the ICPC, and then, of course, the Due Process Office, and the hand of Atiku was seen very, very visibly in the creation of these different agencies. Why were they being brought on board? Because there was that need to be able to correct some of the anomalies that were witnessed during the military era. And of course, once you start a process, you don't expect it to give you all the results that you needed at the same time. After those agencies were established, we saw the need to begin to now strengthen certain institutions. That it was not just about building those agencies. And it was a time where we now needed to, where we started as a party to begin to bring in some reforms, because you needed to introduce some reforms, back them up with a certain reasonable legislation for you to get to where you want to get to. If Nigerians were expecting that the moment you start, that everything would die at once, they must be reminded that the wheel of democracy grinds very, very slowly, but at the end of the day, it's able to satisfy the needs of and yearnings of many, many. And so, if you saw how we progressed from, for instance, if you look at the issue of electoral corruption, You recall what happened in 2007, shortly after Yar'Adua took over. He recognized that the processes that brought him to office were not good enough and that there was need to bring in reforms in the electoral system. Today, we are having much better electoral process because certain reforms were introduced starting from that era. Those reforms continued to the extent that today we have a much more better electoral body. If we had also given way that the PDP has stayed beyond that 2015, by now I'm quite convinced that the issue of corruption would have become far less than what it is today. Unfortunately, those that took over from the PDP did not deepen the process that started with the PDP with respect to strengthening the anti-corruption agencies. And I do believe that once Atiku come on board, a number of these issues will not only be reenacted, but will be positioned in such a way that we'll have a much better country.
All right, let me bring in Obasi. I'm sure you've been listening. I saw you there listening attentively to what Charles Aniagwu has been saying. But what's your assessment? I know that you are a member of the Peter Obi movement. What's your assessment of where we are today as a country as we celebrate 62 years of independence? And then what bearing in mind that your principal was also part of this administration for 8 years as well. Your presidential candidate, rather, was also part of some of this administration for 8 years as well.
Thank you so much. Once more, it's my pleasure being part of this program. And I will not contend with my brother Charles. The country we have today certainly is not the wish of many Nigerians. We know that we have gone down deplorably, terribly bad. I know where we were in 2014, and I know where we are now. So I don't want to go into what the PDP has done, the APC has done, and all that. The fundamental is that the country is in a precarious state today, after 8 years of governance, and things has gone bad. Yes, my principal, Peter Obi, has been in government. He was a member of the APGA. And during his tenure, we saw what he did in Anambra State. He has a lot of landmark achievements as a governor. He states that we know the educational level, that at a point they were one of the lowest in registration for WAEC. And within 4 years of Peter Obi being in that seat as a governor, that state became #1 and consistently has been #1 till he left and beyond. And his legacies are there. The Nigeria, I'm telling you, perhaps if Peter Obi was not part of these contenders, many people, you know, the new slang today is Japa. A lot of people has been driven to the point where they no longer had hope for the country. That's how bad things are. In 2017, I think the immigration, it was in Punch headline. They said that within the first quarter of 2017, that over 500,000 Nigerians left the country. 2017. I read that report. It was terrible. You can imagine now what the situation is. Why are Nigerians leaving? Because things has become terribly bad. And it wasn't like this before 2014. So let us get that clear.
Let me just ask you. I know that you're having this rally.
Okay, go ahead.
I know you're having this rally around Lagos today. But a lot of Nigerians will say, look, we've seen this euphoria before, where people rally around the candidate, and then it wasn't what they expected. Every presidential candidate has his or her supporter, as it were. We have just men in the field this time, has his supporter, or supporters as it rather. But many Nigerians are still undecided, and they're watching, trying to make up their minds on who to vote for. But and in their head, they're wondering, we've seen this before, where we trusted someone, there was a euphoria around the country for a particular candidate, or whether at state level or at national level, and they just didn't deliver. And so they're wondering, why should we trust this particular movement to deliver?
Let me put this clear. The youths, which consist of the largest demography in Nigeria and probably the largest demography in Africa, have made up their mind on who to vote for. Go out on the street and check. You can do your own opinion poll. Let me give you a little story. When we started this POM, my friend and I started this POM about 3 days, a P2B movement, 3 days before P2B left PDP. Within 1 week that P2B left PDP, this movement was already in 10 states in the country, across the country, and we were getting calls all over the place. As I'm talking to you today, P2B movement is in over 27 states in Nigeria and all the local government in those states and wards. So what I'm saying is that when it comes to youths, they are fed up. The youths are fed up. They are fed up by being treated the way we saw the NSAS people were being treated in 2020 when they came to complain. Nobody cares for them. They are fed up that they are at home for over 7 months when the children of the elites find alternatives. They are fed up and they have made up their minds that they are voting P2B. So make no mistake about it. P2B is winning next year's election with no controversy. With no controversy at all.
When you say the youth, you sound as though every youth in Nigeria has decided to vote for P2B. But let me take this conversation.
Preponderance.
Let me take
preponderance of the youths. Preponderance of the youth.
All right, let me take the conversation back to Charles and Yago. Charles, you heard Obasi what he said, and I mean you've seen the rallies. There's a huge turnout. It's been called a 4 million march in Lagos. I'm not sure how many millions they've recorded, but at least there is a huge turnout. And some people say that the PDP actually allowed this to happen by letting Peter Obi go. And that because of the poor choice that the PDP made, a lot of supporters from the PDP went with Peter Obi. And then those who are also aggrieved about the wicked situation also are now with Peter Obi. How do you respond to this? And then how does this impact on your chances in 2023?
Well, let me appreciate my brother Obasi and those who are with them because they have helped us to expand the political discourse. And you know, in economics, there's what we call byproduct. You can say that P2B is one of the byproducts of PDP and indeed Atiku Abubakar. You recall in 2019, Atiku Abubakar was the one who identified him that he could add value to his ticket and he brought him on board. What does that tell you? That Atiku Abubakar is one man who has the capacity to headhunt talents. We don't have any challenge with P2B. He's a Nigerian. We believe that he has got records. We also believe that Atiku's records tour above any of the contestants, and the reason being that the president doesn't govern alone. The Atiku in his days with Obasanjo clearly demonstrated that he can go beyond the political party, go beyond the shores of Nigeria, and even reach out to Nigerians who are in the diaspora and bring them on board. The job of a president is to be able to assemble people to be able to make the difference. You do know that for you to be able to do well in the medical doctor as a president, you don't need to be a medical doctor as a president. All you need to do is to be able to identify those who have got the ability to make a difference in the medical field. And at the end of the day, they bring value. And that was what Atiku assisted Obasanjo to do when they brought in eggheads that changed the trajectory as it was during the military era. And then with the return of democracy, hope returned. And like I said earlier, they were able to rebuild the middle class, which in the last 7 years has been a dirty blow. Now, coming back to the issues raised by my brother Obasi as to the fact that they will win. What they have done in the course of this campaign is largely to identify the challenges. And those challenges are very well known to Nigerians. We have gone beyond identifying the challenges facing Nigerians to begin to profile solutions. As we speak in this contest, Atiku is the only one that has a working document titled My Covenant with Nigerians. And that working document speaks largely to different policy priorities, specifically in 5 thematic areas. One is the issue of the major challenge, which is lack of trust among the component units in this country, particularly the different ethnic groups, whether in terms of religion or in terms of ethnicity. We are very much sharply divided. And my brother Obasi have clearly identified it, that everything has gone low to the extent that our people are jumping out of this country. Atiku is not only just mentioning that we are divided. Atiku is putting in place a policy framework that will address the issue of our diversity and then manage our diversity so that we begin to trust ourselves once again. Beyond the issue of diversity is the issue of security. Atiku is not just telling us that we're insecure, because everybody knows we're insecure. He has 7 areas which he has identified that he's going to deal with in bringing back security to our country. On the issue of the economy, Atiku have made it very, very clear that he's going to have a very warm handshake with the private sector. Why not lying low on the ability of government to provide the necessary regulatory framework for the private sector to function and function effectively? What does that tell you? It tells you that Atiku is that consultant in the hospital who understands that the patient is critically ill and is in the intensive care unit. He's not just a doctor who just wants to have to go to the market to buy the stethoscope. He has got all the necessary equipment to be able to perform the surgery so that the patient does not die. And that is what stands him out among these other candidates. On the education sector, today...
You haven't really answered my question. And I know you're reeling out what your candidate will do. But my question really was, just a minute. My question really was whether you think that your party has made poor choices, and perhaps that the Peter Obi movement has come to sort of disrupt your chances at the poll because of the poor choices you made within your party. And that was my question.
No, that's not true. I started by telling you about him being a byproduct of the party. The PDP is called People's Democratic Party. One stands the PDP tall among other political parties, apart from the fact that it is the only party that is maintaining the same identity since 1999, the same flag, the same logo, the same motto since 1999. It is because it understands what democracy is all about. Particularly for a fledgling democracy such as Nigeria, you begin to have, as not until you're able to develop full ideology, individuals who embark on process of free entry and free exit. And that is what is happening at the moment. But as we make progress, we may begin to get to that level where you develop full ideology among the political parties, where it becomes difficult for individuals to move. And so, Peter Obi moving out of the PDP is because he believed that he may not be able to realize his own ambition, not necessarily because he had any quarrel with the PDP. And I'm not sure he has told anybody that he had any quarrel with the PDP. And so there are many persons who may want to realize their own ambition, which is good in any democratic setting. We do not begrudge him. I have said it earlier that my brother Obasi and others have helped to expand the democratic discourse. But you know what that means? It means that they are saying now what Atiku saw a long time ago. Because those issues they are identifying.
Right. Let me bring Obasi in, because when you were speaking, you said Atiku is the only one who has come up with his plans for the country, almost as though you were saying that Peter Obi
and that's very correct.
Peter Obi doesn't have solutions to the solutions of this country. Just hold on, almost as though you're saying that look, every other person can identify the problem, including Peter Obi himself. But there has been no solution from this candidate. So let me get Obasi to respond to that.
Thank you so much, my sister. My brother Charles know that Peter Obi, why Peter Obi has become like a sugar to ants to Nigerian electorate today is because his messages resonate with the people. Peter Obi has a working plan. Even before he declared his presidency, right from the day one when he was at the Covenant Church program, where he first came out and began to speak about the country, he talked about cost of governance. Cost of running government in Nigeria is probably the highest in any country in the world. We need to unbundle the government. We need to unbundle the things that make government too expensive for us. And we know that Peter Obi is a shrewd businessman. He comes from the private sector, and he has run the private sector, and he's a successful businessman, and everybody knows that. And he entered the public sector, and he realized that the cost of governance was high, and he began to cut the cost of governance, and everybody could go to Anambra and see what it is. He has talked about the infrastructure. When he was the governor in Anambra, he looked at the economy, because Anambra people, they are business people. Well, the first thing he did was to make sure that he linked all the roads of every local government in Anambra. You can go and check it out. So that people who are peasant farmers and traders in other places will be able to aggregate and have a way to move their product to places where they can sell. Now, Peter Obi talked about the power sector, how a country of over 100 million, let me just be modest, is still in this time and era at 5,000 megawatts. I mean, that's embarrassing.
And you're sort of highlighting what the problem is, and that's exactly what Charles Aniago was saying earlier. The question is, what is the solution?
What he was going to do.
Just a minute,
he told you what
because there are those who, Obasi, just a minute, there are those who actually have this concern as well, that every time he speaks, the challenges are highlighted, but the solutions are not given. And Nigerians are saying, for those who are still sitting on the fence, are wondering what the solutions are. Do you have the solution? And what are the solutions? Because we really haven't heard it yet.
Absolutely. You know, when I started, I gave you the problem and solutions. And I told you I used the Anambra model. What the problem is, how to connect business economy, how to expand the economy, what he did in expanding the economy, and including those who are excluded in the economy. I gave you the scenario, and that is being practical, not just theory, practical, what he did, and the effects in Anambra State. You can go and check it out. And today in Anambra State, you know that it's one of the richest states in Anambra in Nigeria, and it's still one of the states that doesn't owe anybody salary. Now we came to power. When Obi declared his for a presidency, the first thing he did was to travel to Egypt, and he had a meeting because as at the time he was in Egypt, Siemens was already in Egypt, and he gave the scenario of what was happening within the Egyptian power sector, and he said he wanted that model, that where within the first year you could actually upload up to between 10 to 20,000 megawatts for Nigeria in order for us to be able to have power that drives the industry. And Siemens, we know that the challenge we are having is that of corruption. Corruption has been endemic. Since 2004 or thereabout, this country had issues going back and forth. But we know that Peter Obi is a very pragmatic person. He said, these people are going to come and they are going to run the energy sector. All right? So that is solution. Then you come to education. I also gave you practical example of how he began to expand the educational sector in Anambra State that made them to become number one. See, first we need to see how to unbundle. And again, talking about unbundling governance and cutting down the cost of governance. He also exemplified that when he was the leader in that state by reducing the number of people that works with him.
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Standpoint. Nigerians are hoping for something better in 2023. A leader who can take this country to what is now regarded as the next level, or a level of change. And this is coming even as these concerns are being raised as we celebrate the 62 years of independence of this nation. Now, we've been speaking to these political parties. Two of them are represented in our conversation today, the PDP and the Labour Party. We have a representative of the PDP he's a member of the PDP and also a member of the Atiku Presidential Campaign Council. He is Charles Aniago, a spokesperson for that council. We also have the Deputy National Chairman of the Peter Obi movement, representing the Peter Obi movement, as it were, in this conversation. Obasi, you were speaking earlier about when I talked about the solutions, whether your candidate has the solutions to the myriad of challenges that you continue to highlight in conversations. And I just want to give you a minute thereabout to land on your thoughts.
All right, thank you so much. So as I was saying earlier on, I gave you a practical example of what he has done in education. And let me also go into agriculture, because we're talking about several factors that is mitigating the growth of Nigeria, several of them. Unemployment, he said that the North Central will be turned into the agricultural hub of Nigeria, producing foods that will be exported outside the country. Now, if we open up our industries, I was sharing with somebody today. I said, when I was growing up, I used to know a Tomapep, Bongo coffee. All right? I used to know of all those things produced in Nigeria. If you're leaving school, jobs are not issues. In fact, you are thinking of which choice will I make here or there. But today, we have over 30 million people out of employment. Now, when you open up the industries, when you open up the agricultural sector, they produce goods. Those goods, from there, you open up industries who will offtake those things to manufacturing, and then you are exporting. All these things are practical. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer, because when somebody said, I asked him, what are the roadmaps? The roadmaps are clear. Has it been done before? But we live in a modern time, in a 21st century time, where things have been computerized, that you have several things that you can even use apps and develop things. Farming, for instance, I have a friend who came back and told me, he said, Chino.
Abasi, sir, I just have to jump in, because I told you I was going to give you a minute to land on your thoughts. If you don't mind, just give me a minute to land on this. He said, my friend in Israel, his farm is just like maybe a plot of land. And that lady produces oranges. From the oranges, nothing is wasted. The oranges, some of them are exported to Europe. The peels are used in making gins and other things, several things. So agriculture alone can offtake several people. So what I'm saying is that the roadmap are already there. And P2B, when he speaks of the problem and he gives you the solutions. And that is why P2B has resonated with the youths all along, because he talks about the issues and then he will give you the roadmap to actualizing those issues. Thank you very much. All right, let me bring in Charles Saniagu. You have heard Obasi, but I now want to, because he has highlighted some of the challenges we are facing in the country at the moment, and one of them is security. There are those who question your presidential candidate's understanding of the security challenge, and we know that he's from the northern part of the country, and of course that's the country, the section of the country that has been hardest hit by the security challenge. But some people say, look, he barely spends his time in the country. He
invited me for a TV forum. Sorry.
All right. So Charles, I hope you're still there. That he barely spends his time in the country, and so does he really understand what is needed to fix the security challenge in the country?
Well, you recall I told you earlier that Nigeria is an intensive care unit, and you require a doctor who is a consultant and not one who is engaged in a house job, who may not have the equipment. In this document called My Covenant with Nigerians, Atiku has everything that you need to be able to address those challenges of that patient who is in the intensive care unit. Beyond that particular one, Atiku has also come up with an economy blueprint. Each one of them encapsulates everything that he needs to put on board. Before I come to the issue of security, my brother Obasi was talking about the issue of country and then having to cost of governance. That is just identifying the challenge. What do you want to do to cut that cost? I'll tell you what Atiku wants to do in that regard. Atiku says for every ailing industry that we are putting money and wasting money, he will give it to the private sector that have got the ability to be able to manage those sectors, like we did in the telecom industry. And then the funds that we are putting in those sectors would have been saved to be able to provide other social services for the people. That's just one key example. That warm handshake with the private sector will reverse a whole lot of things, in addition to providing the necessary framework. Now, coming to the question you asked as to the issue of security, Atiku has a 7-point plan to be able to deal with the issue of security. One, as part of his desire to ensure that he carries everybody along, He says he's going to have appointment of the leadership of the security agency based on competence and based on integrity, and not determined by ethnic consideration. That is not going to have a process where you say, because he is Fulani, let me also go and look for a Fulani man. Or because I'm from the north, let me go and look for a northerner. Or because I'm a Muslim, let me go and look for a Muslim. Atiku says if the Christian from the southeast is that man who is competent, he will give that job to him because he will bring competence to the management of that security agency. That's one. Secondly,
Charles, I am forced to jump in because you have shown 2 documents. But the truth is, yes, Nigerians have seen documents before. We've seen documents that were, I mean, when you read them, you would think that Nigeria the issues of this country will be fixed in the next 3 months because they were fantastic documents. We're not short of those kind of documents. But what Nigerians are looking for is someone who has the willpower, because it is not the ideas or the solution that seems to be the problem. It's the willpower to fix these challenges. And for example, we've seen, I think it was absolutely, it was during the, sadly and unfortunately, Deborah, who was murdered in Sokoto over allegations of blasphemy. We saw how your presidential candidate posted on, I think it was on Facebook or Twitter, and then deleted that message and said he wasn't the one who posted it. And the other one he posted was sort of vague. And that left Nigerians wondering, does it have the willpower? Will it have the willpower to confront these issues without ethnic and religious sentiments?
I don't know how many times that President Muhammadu Buhari have had calls to commiserate with those who died. And then the next moment, another person dies. Nigerians are not looking for somebody to commiserate with them. Nigerians want somebody who is going to fix the problem. So if you are looking at the issue of whether there was a tweet and there was a deletion of the tweet, that was not what was going to solve the problem. Even if you put a tweet commiserating people for 3 million years and you're not able to take the steps to address those challenges, you have not been able to solve the problem. Atiku is profiling solutions. You said it's not just about having documents. They're saying in my place that it's from the house that you know the firewood that will get to the farm. First of all, as a medical doctor, like I told you before, who is serious in dealing with the issues of a patient who is in the intensive care unit, you need to, first of all, have hope about the equipment, about the instruments he has. Not the one that you get that is, okay, wait for me, let me go to the market and buy one stethoscope, or let me go and buy scissors. In this case, this particular doctor, this consultant, has got what he needs to be able to perform surgery on this patient that is in critical condition. That is step one. You talked about the issue of willpower. I have given you an example of what the Obasanjo-Atiku administration did with respect to bringing in persons even from outside the political party. That is a height of demonstration of the willpower. To be able to even ignore those who even assisted you in winning the election. To bring in eggheads that have got the capacity beyond political consideration to be able to make a difference. You need to go and read the history of the Obasanjo-Atiku administration to appreciate the role, even as vice president, the role he played. Even as the chairman, as the head of the Economic Council of the state, he also demonstrated a whole lot of competence. In addition to the fact that he's not one that you can quote to have been able to make comments that divide us or comments that will lead to issue of insults. And so, which is also why we are very pleased about the issue of everybody now talking about peace. I am enjoying the conversation with my brother, Obasi. The only point of disagreement between both of us is that we have a candidate that is more like a consultant in the hospital and another candidate that is just engaged in a house job. That is just the difference. Both of them mean well, but just that this other candidate in the person of Atiku is already well versed with the issues and is prepared to deal with those issues. And so in trying to tell you what I was talking about, my argument about what we are going to do with respect to security, Atiku is going to unfold a presidential plan that will talk about welfare for those who are protecting us and suffering day and night for us to be able to sleep peacefully at night. That is going to come in as a way of motivating our security agencies. All right. The issue of anti-rivalry
I have little time. I would like to bring in Obasi. I think, sorry, Mr. Niago, I just have a few minutes left. I'm trying
I hope you have another time because we have
absolutely. Campaigns have started. I'm sure we will have you a couple of times. We'll have you a couple of times, but I want to ensure that both of you have enough time to speak on these issues. But let me bring you in because Charles Niago seems to be saying that, look, your presidential candidate doesn't have the stethoscope, and I know that that's just some sort of symbol he's using to say that your candidate isn't prepared. But I'm staying on security. You will respond to that and also respond to the issue of security because many people are saying, where was your candidate when the security challenge in the Southeast was ongoing? He was there. And that if under him, that wasn't fixed. So why should they believe that he can fix the security challenge in the country?
Thank you so much. Thank you once more. Charles, Charles, my brother, I must say that his analogy is very interesting. If my principal could be seen and approached by his principal, that is to show you the capability of my principal. Now, but let us go beyond that, because Nigerian people are tired of the old order. The elites are taking Nigerians for granted. They have taken Nigerians for granted for too long, and they believe in doing things as usual. To that extent, most people no longer want the elites and the establishment because they have destroyed the country. And that is why you see that P2B resonates with everybody. Now, on the security, when P2B was in Anambra State, Anambra was, go and check. It's on, I mean, thank God that internet doesn't lie. Anambra State was declared by the police IG at that time as the safest state in the country. Of course, we know that the current dysfunctional structure, which makes a governor chief security of the state, but does not give him the enabling power to control the apparatus of security, is a handicap for them. Even at that, it was a way he had a way he walked around that system and brought peace to Anambra State. But when you come to Nigeria, I will tell you that why Boko Haram and insecurity has subsisted up to this moment is because there is no political will on the powers that be to deal with it. My dear sister, there are drones. If you want, even satellite can stay here and pick up. You can punch your Google now and say you want to a place in a Google map. It will give you a pinpoint in Barono. So I would say we don't have people that knows about these things. But the challenge has been political.
But Obasi, let me come in, because I know that we can highlight.
I'm coming. My principal is coming with that political will.
Just let me quickly jump in. Like I said, I'm managing time.
Go ahead.
We can highlight the issues around this country and not really look at where we're coming from. How will your principal respond to there is a sit-at-home order now in the Southeast every Monday. People follow it to the latter. They're scared to even come out of their homes. How will your principal respond to all of these issues? A lot of facilities, government infrastructure have been brought down in the Southeast. How will he respond to that and ensure that the Southeast is back to where it is coming from, where people could move around without fear and without of their safety and security?
Thank you very much. Again, those are functions of trust on leadership. What brought such situation at the first place? Lack of trust on leadership. When the people see a leader they trust, and that leader begins to speak with them. I will give you a story of Walimu, former president of Tanzania, who the Tanzanians were going on protest. And the man came out, and the security details were telling them, don't come out, that these people will. And he said, if I'm a leader and my people are disillusioned, they are not happy with me, then what am I doing? He came out to join the crowd and spoke to the crowd, and the crowd heard him, and everybody dispersed. Julius Nyerere. That's leadership. When the issue in the Southeast was not there, it was managed even up until 2014. It didn't blow up under a government, like many people have said, that tried to exclude the people, the whole people. And then this came up. So when they see people that they can trust, when they see leadership that they can trust, naturally you will see that these things will whittle off. Naturally, it will go off. But like I said, security is I would say that it is basically exclusive to the president. And if we have exclusive in terms of control of the military and all the other apertures of security. So if you have a government and a president that has the political will to deal decisively with security, of course, there are no country, everywhere in the world, there are pockets of insecurity here and there. But for us to have terrorism, Nigerians are not terrorists.
But let me ask you, because again, Obasi, and Charles and Iago, I'll come to you in just a minute, because you're saying it's the issue of trust.
Yes.
The issue of Boko Haram had started even before President Buhari took office. And, you know, there was also that issue of people thought that if we probably have a northern president, the issue would automatically go away. But it's still there today. We're having more issues of banditry. Are you saying that there is no trust in that regard? And what if the issue persists? What if this crisis persists? Because you can say that you almost stand as though you think that it will go away as soon as Peter Obi becomes, if he becomes president. But what if it doesn't? How will he respond?
Again, I said something. Nothing is cast on stone. I am not saying that there is a magic wand to it. But I'm saying that when you have a leadership that is trusted, that to a large extent, most of the things will go down. Yes, the Boko Haram started during Yar'Adua's time, but they did not take the violent aspect until perhaps during Jonathan's time, if you recall. And it did not escalate to the way it was now until after Jonathan. So what I'm saying is that if we have a government that is decisive and at the same time sincere, most of these things will be certainly dealt with. Trust me, they'll be dealt with.
You still haven't answered my question. What if it isn't? How will your principal respond? Because you're speaking based on what you believe or what you hope will happen. If it doesn't happen, how will he respond?
Now you're asking me a futuristic question. What I'm saying is that I know that there are factors. When you deal with the factors that leads to insecurity, the factors, number one, you're going to deal with the poverty issue, the inequality, excessive inequality, the injustices. And when you sincerely have a leader that is able to address these issues, and then if the other one comes, the other criminality, and then the criminality will be dealt with according to the law. And then they see. Let me give you a typical example.
I wish I had enough time for the example.
Kabiri Sokoto was taken to court.
Obasi, I have to bring in Charles. I need to get like a last word from Charles just before we close out. Charles, your party is now dealing with issues of, around allegation of financial misappropriation. We've heard members of your party go around to say your presidential candidate will fight corruption if he wins. But these allegations have been against the national leadership of your party. We haven't heard anything from your presidential candidate. Why should Nigerians trust you to deal with corruption if even before the election, there are issues of corruption and financial misappropriation in your party?
Well, thank you very much. But shortly before I go into that, let me tell you what we want to do with respect to the Southeast as part of solving the challenge. It's not just wishing that it's going to naturally go away and then invite God to come and take charge. We will help ourselves by taking steps, and then God will help us in the course of that step. And that step is that Atiku says he's going to engage with state actors and non-state actors to first of all know why they are doing what they are doing. And in the case of the South, it is very well known, issue of marginalization. And he's going to address it by giving them their due. That is that. Then coming to the question you asked, I'm sure you know those who claimed that they were being bribed. And you must first of all look at it. What the PDP has suffered in the last couple of months is what my wonderful sister, Chimamanda Adichie, described in one of her write-ups as this danger of a single story. We have, in the course of time, because we are looking for peace and we're still very much interested in peace in our party, decide to ignore so many narratives. And those narratives actually fall within the realm of the danger of a single story. And so you have a story coming from one side, and then just like the story between the hunter and the hunted. Usually it is the hunter that tells the story, and when it does, it is always favorable to the hunter until you are able to get the hunter one day, the hunted one day. But we will not join issues with anybody. Who does bribing through a bank account of a political party to another account? These monies have been paid 14 days. In short, I will even want to say that they need to even return the interest that this money may have accrued in the past 2 weeks. These individuals have always had issue of being provided for because they left their different zones to come to Abuja to work for the party. Of course, these are not small children that you ask to go to Nyanya. They will need to live in a place like either Asokoro, Metama, or Wusetu, because they are not small children. That is the kind of area where they are kind of persons live. If you have to provide accommodation and furniture for those persons for a period of 2 years, because those who are saying the money is too much, they should go and maybe price houses, rent in these areas I have mentioned, where this class of persons actually belong.
All right.
The money was not only paid for to only members of the National Working Committee, even staff in PDP, were they also going to be involved in the issue of determining whether IU stays or not? And don't forget also that the National Executive Committee of the party, which is the highest the highest decision-making body of the party besides the National Convention, have already passed a vote of confidence on IU. So why would he need to bribe anybody for him to stay in office? And if he's going to bribe anybody, is he also going to bribe himself?
I wish we could continue this conversation. I'm being told, you know, that we have to go. Because again, I wish Abasi will also respond to the issues of the Pandora paper that was published by one of the Premium Times here, where Peter Obi's name was also mentioned. I wish you could respond to that, but our time is up. But I would have you gentlemen again to speak as we continue, our campaigns in the country continue. There is never enough time to talk about the issues when it comes to Nigeria. Thank you both for talking to us. Happy Independence Day to you. Charles Aniagwu, spokesperson for the PDP Presidential Campaign Council, and Obasi Chinonso, who is the Deputy National Chairman of the Peter Obi movement. Thank you both.
My brother Obasi, I look forward to seeing you come back home. All right, whilst you pack your bags, that's it today on Standpoint.